Medieval 12. Provincial kingdoms of Medieval India. Provincial kingdoms. As we have discussed earlier, the Delhi Sultanate expanded as a result of the annexation of the states like Bengal, Bihar, Gujarat, Malwa, various states of Rajasthan, like Ranthambore, Jalore, Nagaur, Arma, the Deccan states of Warangal, Telangana, the Yadavas of Devagiri, the southern states of the Hoysalas of Dwarsamudra and the Pandyas of Madurai. However, after the 13th century, around the reign of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, due to internal weaknesses, the process of disintegration of the Delhi Sultanate started. It was during this period that some of the provincial rulers declared their independence from the rule of the Sultanate and a large number of regional states arose. The establishment of Vijayanagar and the Bahmani kingdom were a result of the assertion of power by provincial officers like Hora and Bukka, and Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah respectively. Similarly, the sultanates in Gujarat, Malwa, Bengal and Jaunpur near Varanasi emerged as powerful provincial kingdoms. This constant evolution and development of provincial states can also be explained on the basis of growth of agriculture and agriculture-related activities, as wherever good agricultural activity took place, it not only fed the population but generated a large surplus that could be sold and wealth could be generated. This resulted in the rise of powerful sections in the society that controlled the agricultural surplus. Sometimes, some members of this powerful section asserted themselves and acquired political power and became kings and established ruling dynasties. Whereas sometimes some groups came from outside who conquered the land, controlled the administration, and became powerful. An important point to note is that all these kingdoms had a regional history that predated the Sultanate period. For instance, Bengal was an important regional kingdom in the 8th and the 9th centuries under the Palas and subsequently in the 12th century under the Senas. Even the regional state of Vijayanagar ruled over different cultural zones. Hence, it should be noted that these provincial kingdoms never disappeared, though the regional dynasties gained and lost power, and the regions changed their geographical boundaries. Even though these states did wage wars amongst themselves, they provided stability over their respective regions. These different regional dynasties had their own vibrant culture and exclusive art, literature and architecture forms, and they too influenced each other. Thus, these provincial kingdoms were not closed isolated areas, rather they were in continuous interaction, be it religious, cultural or economic, with another kingdoms. For instance, the early Vijayanagar rulers called themselves as Hindu Suratrana, meaning Hindu Sultan, where the term Sultan was borrowed from the Delhi Sultanate. Similarly, the Iqtidari system of the Delhi Sultanate influenced the administrative systems of the Vijayanagar and Bahmani kingdoms. There were well-established trade and commerce networks, and regular migration of artisans occurred from one region to another, as evident in the migration of the silk weavers Patanalkas from the Gujarat region to the Vijayanagar state in the 15th century. Deccan and Southern India, Vijayanagar and Bahmani kingdom. The Vijayanagar kingdom, c. 1336-1672 CE. The Vijayanagar kingdom constituted four dynasties: Sangama, c. 1336-1485 CE, Saluva, c. 1485-1503 CE, Tuluva, c. 1503-1570 CE, and Aravidu, till the end of the 17th century. There are varied sources for the study of the Vijayanagar kingdom, such as literary and archaeological sources, as well as numismatics. Krishnadevaraya's Amukthamalayada, Gangadevi's Madura Vijayam, and Alasani Pedana's Manukaritam are some of the indigenous literature of this period. Many foreign travellers' valuable accounts on the socio-economic conditions of the Vijayanagar kingdom are also available, since they visited the Vijayanagar kingdom. This includes the Moroccan Ibn Battuta, Venetian Niccolo de Conti, Persian Abdul Razak, and the Portuguese Domingo Paz. The copperplate inscriptions such as the Srirangam copperplates of Devaraya too provide the genealogy and achievements of Vijayanagar rulers. The Hampi ruins and other monuments of Vijayanagar provide information on the cultural contributions of the Vijayanagar rulers. The numerous coins issued by the Vijayanagar rulers contain figures and legends explaining their titles and achievements. It is pertinent to note that the empire included people from different cultural regions, the Tamil, Telugu, and Karnataka region, who all spoke different languages and belonged to different cultures. Map of Deccan Sultanate and Vijayanagar Empire. Elephant Stables, Hampi. Sangama Dinner. Hora and Bukka, c. 1336-1377 CE, founders of the Sangama dynasty of Vijayanagar kingdom. According to legends, they belonged to a family of 5 brothers and were originally feudatories of the Kakatiyas of Warangal, and after their fall, they served as ministers in the Kampali state, modern Karnataka. When Kampala was overrun by Muhammad bin Tughlaq for giving refuge to a Muslim rebel, the two brothers were imprisoned and converted to Islam. Later, they returned to the Hindu fold at the initiative of the Saint Vijayaranya. They also proclaimed their independence, and to commemorate the memory of their guru, the brothers founded a new city of Vidyanagar or Vijayanagara, meaning city of victory, on the south bank of river Tungabhadra. The decline of the Hoysala kingdom enabled Horihora and Bukka to expand their newly founded kingdom. By c. 1346 CE, they brought the whole of the Hoysala kingdom under their control. It is pertinent to note that in this struggle they were aided by their brothers who, with their relations, took up the administration of the areas conquered, and thus the Vijayanagara kingdom was a kind of cooperative commonwealth at first. Bukka succeeded his brother in c. 1356 and ruled till 1377 CE. During his reign, the Sultanate of Madurai was eliminated. Horihora II, c. 1377-1406 CE, the Vijayanagara Empire embarked on expansion towards the eastern sea coast under his reign. He continued to extend the kingdom's territory through a series of conflicts against the Reddys of Kondavidu for the control of the Andhra between Nellore and Kalinga. From the Reddys of Kondavidu, Horihora II conquered the Adanki and Srisalam areas as well as most of the territory between the peninsula to the south of the river Krishna, which eventually brought him in confrontation with the Valamas of Rakakonda, Telangana. Horihora II was able to maintain his position in the face of the Bahmani-Warangal alliance. His greatest success was in wresting Belgaum and Goa in the west from Bahmani Sultanate. According to legends, the ruler of Warangal had helped Bahmani Sultanate founder, Hassan Gangu, in his struggle against Delhi. But his successor invaded Warangal and seized the stronghold of the Kaulas and the hill fort. This alliance of Warangal and the Bahmani Sultanate lasted for over 50 years and was a major factor in the ability of Vijayanagara to overrun the Tungabhadra Doab. Deva Raya I, c. 1406-1422 CE, he was a very capable ruler noted for his military exploits and his support to irrigation works in his kingdom. He constructed a dam across river Tungabhadra to bring canals into the city to relieve the shortage of water. He also built a dam on the river Haridra for irrigation purposes. Throughout his reign, Deva Raya was continually at war with the Valamas of Telangana, the Bahmani Sultan of Gulbarga, the Reddys of Kondavidu, and the traditional rivals of Vijayanagara, the Gajapatis of Kalinga. Early in his career, he was defeated by the Bahmani ruler Firoz Shah and had to not only pay a huge indemnity but also had to marry his daughter to the Sultan. But this marriage could buy peace only for a short time, and later, with the ruler of Warangal on his side, the balance of power in the Deccan tilted in favour of Deva Raya I. In c. 1420 CE, Firoz Shah invaded Pangal, which had been taken by Vijayanagar, but this time Deva Raya inflicted a shattering defeat on Firoz Shah. The 2-year siege at Pangal ended in disaster for Firoz Shah's armies. The Sultan had to hand over the southern and eastern districts of his kingdom to Deva Raya I. Consequently, by c. 1422, Deva Raya I came to control territory up to the Krishna, Tungabhadra Doab including Pangal. He modernized the Vijayanagar army by improving the cavalry, employing Turkic archers, and procuring horses from Arabia and Persia. He maintained a secular attitude in administrative matters. He had 10,000 Muslims in his army, being the first Vijayanagar king to do so. He had a mosque and a slaughterhouse constructed for the convenience of the Muslim soldiers in his army. Italian traveller, Niccolò Conti, in c. 1420, and Russian merchant Nikitin, author of Voyage to India, visited during his reign. Niccolò Conti commented on Vijayanagara and Deva Raya I that in this city, there are 90,000 men fit to bear arms, their king is more powerful than all the kings of India. Deva Raya I was a patron of Kannada literature and architecture. There was a pearl hall where he honoured men of eminence. Madura, a noted Jain poet, was in his court, and also in the court of his father King Horihora II. He wrote the Dharmanatha Purana on the life of the 15th Jain Tirthankar in Kannada, as well as a poem in eulogy of Gomateshwara of Shravanabelagol. The noted Hazare Rama temple, an excellent example of Deccan architecture, was constructed during his rule. The credit for making the capital city of the Vijayanagar kingdom one of the biggest cities in the 15th century goes to him. Deva Raya II, c. 1425-46 CE, the greatest of the Sangama dynasty rulers who was an able administrator, an ambitious warrior, and a man of letters. He authored well-known works in the Kannada language, Sobhajina Sone and Amaruka, and in the Sanskrit language, Mahanataka Sudhanadi. He also wrote a commentary on the Brahma Sutra. Some of the most noted Kannada poets of the medieval period, such as Chamarasa and Kumara Vyasa, gained his patronage. The Sanskrit poet Gunda Dimdima, and gifted Telugu poet Kavisarvabhuma, emperor among poets, Srinatha, author of Harivilasam, was also present at his court. In case of secular literature, the noted South Indian mathematician, Parameshvara, from the Kerala School of Astronomy and Mathematics lived in his kingdom. He acquired the title of Gajabetagara, which literally means hunter of elephants, an honorific title that explained his addiction to hunting elephants, or a metaphor referring to his victories against enemies who were as strong as elephants. Despite some reversals, Deva Raya too extended and held territories up to the Krishna River. According to an account of the visiting Persian chronicler Abdur Razak, Deva Raya II's empire extended from Ceylon to Gulbarga, and Orissa to the Gajapathy ruler Malabar, and according to Niccolo Conti, the king levied tribute on Ceylon, Quillan, Pagu, Pulicat. The next dynasty, Saluva, founded by Saluva Narasimha, the earlier king's minister, reigned only for a brief period, c. 1486-1509 CE. Tuluva's dynasty Veera Narasimha Raya, c. 1505-1509 CE. Krishna Deva Raya, c. 1509-29 CE, the greatest of the Vijayanagara rulers, was also known as Abhinavaboha, Andra Boha, as he was great patron of literature and art. His imposing personality was accompanied by high intellectual quality. He was a great commander and an efficient administrator. He fought a series of war with the independent kingdoms, Deccan sultanates, that came up on the ruins of the Bahmani kingdom. The Muslim armies were decisively defeated in the Battle of Diwani. Then he invaded the Raichur Doab and completely shattered the Adil Shahi forces of Bijapur I, attacked Gulbarga and captured the city of Raichur in c. 1520 CE, and set free the 3 Bahmani princes who were imprisoned there. He thus restored the Bahmani Sultanate to Muhammad Shah, and Krishna Deva himself took the title of Yavanarajya Sthapanacharya. Krishna Deva Raya's Orissa campaign was also successful. He defeated the Gajapathy ruler Prataparudra and conquered the whole of Telangana. He compelled the ruler of Orissa to restore to Vijayanagar all the territories up to the river Krishna. He also maintained law and order and dealt with the Portuguese influence in the Deccan. He maintained friendly relations with the Portuguese. King Albuquerque sent his ambassadors to the court of Krishna Deva Raya. The Portuguese travelers. Domingo Paz and Barbosa came to India during his reign. Though a Vaishnavate, he respected all religions. 8 eminent scholars of Telugu known as the Ashta Diggajas adorned his court. Alasani Pedana, the greatest, who was also called Andrakavita Pitamaga, his important works include Manukaritam and Harikathasaram. Tenali Ramon Krishna, author of Pandaonga Mahamatyam. Pingali Saana, author of Garuda Purnam, Prabhavati Pradyumnamu, Rogva Pandaviyam and Kalapanodiyamu. He himself authored Amukthamalayada, Telugu, Jambavati Kalyanam and Ushapuranayam, Sanskrit. He built some fine stone temples such as famous the Vitala Swami and Hazara Ramaswamy temples at Vijayanagar. Apart from repairing many temples, he also added impressive gopurams or gateways to many important South Indian temples. The famous temple of Tirupati greatly developed during his period as the deity there was his titular deity. He also founded a suburban township near Vijayanagar called Nagalapuram after his mother. Some of the most detailed descriptions of Vijayanagar come from his period. Achyuta Deva Raya, c. 1529-1542 CE, was the younger brother of Krishna Deva Raya, who handpicked him to be his successor. A Portuguese traveller, Fernão Nunes, came to India during his reign. He patronized the Kannada poet Chattu Vittalanatha, the great singer and composer Purandaradasa, father of Carnatic music, and the Sanskrit scholar Rajanatha Dindama too. The Tiruvengalanatha temple, which is now popularly known by his name as the Achyutaraya temple, was built in Vijayanagar during his reign. Upon his death, the succession was disputed. His son, Venkata Raya or Venkatadri Raya, succeeded him, but he was a weak ruler and was killed 6 months later. Then Krishna Deva Raya's son Sadasiva Raya finally became king while yet a child, under the regency of Aravidu Aliya Rama Raya, son-in-law of Krishna Deva Raya. The word Aliya means son-in-law in the Kannada language. Along with another brother, Venkatadri, the Aravidu brothers rose to prominence during the rule of Krishna Deva Raya. Rama Raya was a successful army general, able administrator, and tactful diplomat who conducted many victorious campaigns during the rule of Krishna Deva Raya. Thus after the demise of his illustrious father-in-law, as a member of the family, Rama Raya began to wield great influence over the affairs of the state. Sadasiva Raya, c. 1542-1570 CE, last ruler of Tuluva dynasty. He was a puppet in the hands of his minister, Aliya Rama Raya, who was the de facto king. He removed the old nobility and replaced it with those loyal to him. Rama Raya tried to balance the Deccan powers by playing one against the other. For instance, when the Nizam of Ahmadnagar and Kutab Shahi of Golconda sought Rama Raya's help against Bijapur, Rama Raya secured the Raja Doab for his benefactors. Later in c. 1549 CE, when the Adil Shahi of Bijapur and Barid Shahi of Bida declared war on Nizam Shahi of Ahmadnagar, Rama Raya fought on behalf of the Ahmadnagar ruler and secured the fort of Kalyana. In c. 1557 CE, Rama Raya allied himself with Ali Adil Shahi of Bijapur and Barid Shahi of Bida when the Sultan of Bijapur invaded Ahmednagar. His constantly changing sides to improve his own position eventually prompted the sultanates to form an alliance. The Deccan states, Bijapur, Ahmadnagar, Golconda and Bida, except Berar, thus formed a confederacy and inflicted a crushing blow on the Vijayanagar armies at Banihatti in the Battle of Talikota in c. 1565 CE. This battle is also known as Rakshasathaingadi. Rama Raya was imprisoned and executed and the city of Vijayanagar was destroyed. The Battle of Banihatti is generally considered to mark the end of the Vijayanagar Empire. It should be noted that Caesar Frederick visited Vijayanagar after Battle of Talikota. However, the Vijayanagar kingdom continued to exist under the Aravidu dynasty, which ruled from Penakonda and later from Chandragiri, near Tirupati, for about another century. Thirumala, Srironga, and Venkata too were the important rulers of this dynasty. The last ruler of Vijayanagar kingdom was Srironga III, c. 1642-1646 CE. Administration of Vijayanagar kingdom. There was a well-organized administration under the Vijayanagar kingdom. The Rayas, king, enjoyed absolute authority in executive, judicial and legislative matters. He was the highest court of appeal. In the matter of justice, harsh punishments such as mutilation and throwing to elephants were given. Succession to the throne was mostly on the principle of hereditary, but sometimes usurpation to the throne also occurred, such as when Saluva Narasimha came to power by ending the Sangama dynasty. The king was assisted by a council of ministers in his day-to-day administration. The kingdom was divided into different administrative units called mandalams, nadus, sthalas, and finally into gramas. The governor of the mandalam was called Mandaleswara or Noyok. Vijayanagar rulers gave full powers to the local authorities in the administration. It is pertinent to note that the Kola traditions of village self-government were considerably weakened under the Vijayanagar rulers. The growth of hereditary Noyokships tended to curb their freedom and initiative. The governors of the provinces were royal princes at first. Later, persons belonging to vassals of the ruling families and nobles were also appointed as governors. The provincial governors had a large measure of autonomy as they held their own courts, appointed their own officers, and maintained their own armies. At times, they even issued their own coins, though in small denominations. The term for the provincial governor was not fixed and it depended on his ability and strength. Each governor paid a fixed contribution in men and money to the central government. Thus, it would not be totally wrong to assume that Vijayanagar was more a confederacy than a centralized empire. Besides land revenue, tributes, and gifts from vassals and feudal chiefs, customs collected at the ports, taxes on various professions, were other sources of income to the government. Land revenue was fixed at generally 1/6 of the produce. Army and military organization. The conflict between Vijayanagar Empire and the Bahmani kingdom lasted for many years. The dispute over Raja Doab, i.e., the region between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra and also over the fertile areas of Krishna, Godavari Delta led to this long-drawn conflict. In order to wage continuous wars, there was a need to keep a large army. The Vijayanagar army was very well organized and efficient. It consisted of the cavalry, infantry, artillery, and elephants. Hybrid horses were procured from foreign traders. The Vijayanagar rulers imported high-quality horses from across the Arabian Sea from Arabia and other Gulf countries. The port of Malabar was the center of this trade and trade in other luxury commodities. The Vijayanagar rulers always attempted to control the port of Malabar. One of the important characteristics of the Vijayanagar administration was the Amora Nayaka system. The top-grade officers of the army were known as Noyoks or Palayagas or Poligas. Interestingly, these officers were granted land, called Amaram, in lieu of their services while soldiers were usually paid in cash. The Nayaka was responsible for expanding agricultural activities in his Amaram area. He collected taxes in his area and with this income maintained his army, horses, elephants, and weapons of warfare that he had to supply to the Raya or the Vijayanagar ruler. The Nayaka was also the commander of the forts. Some of the revenue was also used for the maintenance of temples and irrigation works. The Amoronaiakas sent tribute to the king annually and personally appeared in the royal court with gifts to express their loyalty. It is noteworthy to add that in the 17th century, several of these Nayakas such as those of Tanja and Madurai became independent and established separate states and emerged as a powerful section that challenged the Vijayanagar authority, weakened its internal structures and contributed to the defeat of the Vijayanagar in the Battle of Talikota. The Vijayanagar state also was familiar with the use of firearms and employed Turkish and Portuguese experts to train the soldiers in the latest weaponry of warfare. The walls of the forts were made thick to counter the firearms and special kinds of door with fortified walls front were constructed. On the walls of the forts, special kinds of big holes were made to rest the guns. Special kinds of parapets were constructed on the forts to put the cannons on it. They had both small firearms such as rifles and pistols, and certain heavy arms such as cannons, which had to be put on a bullock cart or on an elephant and pushed into the battlefield. Social life. Alasani Pedana in his Manukaritam refers to the existence of 4 castes, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, in the Vijayanagar society. Foreign travellers left vivid accounts on the splendour of buildings and luxurious social life in the city of Vijayanagar. Pars mentions the beautiful houses of the rich and the large number of their household servants. Niccolo Conti refers to the prevalence of slavery. Silk and cotton clothes were mainly used for dress. Dancing, music, wrestling, gambling, and cockfighting were some of the common forms of amusement. The Sangama rulers were chiefly Shaivates and Virupaksha was their family deity while other dynasties were Vaishnavites. Ramanuja's Sri Vaishnavism was very popular. It is pertinent to note that all kings were tolerant towards other religions. Barbosa referred to the religious freedom enjoyed by everyone. Regarding Krishna Deva Raya's tolerant attitude, Barbosa says, the king allows such freedom that every man may come and go and live according to his own creed, without suffering any annoyance, and without inquiry whether he is a Christian, Jew, Moor or heathen. Muslims were employed in the administration and they were freely allowed to build mosques and worship. As we have read earlier, Deva Raya too enrolled Muslims in his armed services, allotted them jagirs, and erected a mosque for their use in the city. A large number of temples were built during this period and numerous festivals were celebrated. The position of women was not much improved. However, some of them were learned such as Gangadevi, wife of Kumrakampana, who authored the famous work Madura Vijayam. Hanama and Thirumalama were 2 other famous poets. According to Nunnais, a large number of women were employed in the royal palaces as dancers, domestic servants, and palanquin bearers. Sahagaman, i.e., Sati was honoured. The practice of Devadasi, attachment of dancing girls to temples, was in place. Even Pars refers to the flourishing Devadasi system of this period. Polygamy was prevalent among the royal families. Interestingly, the temples were rich and also took active part in both internal and overseas trade. Economy. According to the accounts of the foreign travellers, the Vijayanagar kingdom was one of the wealthiest kingdoms of the world at that time. Agriculture continued to be the chief occupation of the people. The Vijayanagar rulers provided a stimulus to its further growth by providing irrigation facilities. New tanks were built and dams were constructed across the rivers like Tungabhadra. Nunnais refers to the excavation of canals. There were numerous industries and they were organized into guilds. Metal workers and other craftsmen flourished during this period. Diamond mines were located in Kurnool and Anantapur district. Vijayanagar was also a great center of trade. The chief gold coin was the Varaha, but weights and measures varied from place to place. Inland, coastal, and overseas trade led to the general prosperity. There were a number of seaports on the Malabar coast, the chief being Cannanore. Commercial contacts with Arabia, Persia, South Africa, and Portugal on the west, and with Burma, the Malay Peninsula and China on the east flourished. The chief items of exports were cotton and silk clothes, spices, rice, iron, saltpeter, and sugar. The imports consisted of horses, pearls, copper, coral, mercury, China silk, and velvet clothes. The art of shipbuilding had developed. Cultural contributions. The temple-building activity further gained momentum during the Vijayanagar rule. The chief characteristics of the Vijayanagar architecture were the construction of tall Raya Gopurams or gateways and the Kalina Mandam with carved pillars in the temple premises. The sculptures on the pillars were carved with distinctive features. The horse was the most common motif found on these pillars. Large mandapams contain 100 pillars, as well as 1,000 pillars in some big temples. These mandapams were used for seating the deity on festival occasions. Also, many Arman shrines were added to the already existing temples during this period. The most important temples of the Vijayanagar style were found in the Hampi ruins or the city of Vijayanagar. Vitalaswamy and Hazara Ramaswamy temples were the best examples of this style. The Varadaraja and Ekamparanatha temples at Kanchipuram stand as examples for the magnificence of the Vijayanagara style of temple architecture. The Rayagopurams at Thiruvannamalai and Chidambaram speak of the glorious epoch of Vijayanagar. They were continued by the Noyak rulers in the later period. The metal images of Krishna Deva Raya and his queens at Tirupati are examples for casting of metal images. Music and dancing were also patronized by the rulers of Vijayanagar. Different languages such as Sanskrit, Telugu, Kannada, and Tamil flourished in the regions. There was a great development in Sanskrit and Telugu literature. The peak of literary achievement was reached during the reign of Krishna Deva Raya. He himself was a scholar in Sanskrit and Telugu. His famous court poet Alasoni Pedana was distinguished in Telugu literature. Thus, the cultural contributions of the Vijayanagar rulers were many-sided and remarkable. Key term concept meaning A. Pradhani Prime Minister B. Raisoni recorded oral order of King C. Karnikam accountant D. Kadamal, Irai, right kinds of taxes. E. Athavain Land Revenue Department F. Mahanayakatra acted as linkage between kings and villages. G. Padikaval selling of policing rights. H. Talara Watchman. Bahmani Sultanate, c. 1347–1527 CE. In the 14th century, along with Vijayanagar kingdom, another powerful kingdom arose in South India, which was the Bahmani Sultanate. As we can recall that, the Deccan region was a part of the provincial administration of the Delhi Sultanate. In order to establish a stable administration in the Deccan, Mohammed bin Tughlaq appointed Amir-i Sadr, also known as Sadr Amir, administrative heads of 100 villages. From c. 1337 CE, the conflict between the officers in Deccan and Delhi Sultanate accelerated, which ultimately resulted in the establishment of an independent state in the Deccan in c. 1347 CE with the capital at Gulbarga in Andhra Pradesh. Its founder, Hassan Gangu, assumed the title Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah, as he traced his descent from the mythical hero of Iran, Bahman Shah, and the kingdom was named the Bahmani Sultanate after him. Since after Mohammed bin Tughlaq there were no attempts by the Delhi Sultanate to control the Deccan region, therefore, the Bahmani sultans without any checks annexed the other parts of the kingdom too. One of the important acquisitions was the control over Dabhol, an important port on the west coast. Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah, c. 1347–58 CE, founder of the Bahmani Sultanate, who was an Afghan adventurer, who began his career as a general serving under the Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Nasir ad-Din Ismail Shah, who had revolted against the Delhi Sultanate, stepped down in favor of Bahman Shah. However, according to the historian Ferishta, his original name was Hassan Gangu, as he had earlier served in the service of a Brahmana named Gangu, and he adopted the word Bahman Shah as a tribute to his Brahmana patron. He had regular confrontations with the Vijayanagar kingdom and Warangal state. He led his first administration. It is said that it was from his time that the Deccan Brahmins became dominant in administration. Ahmad Shah Wali, c. 1422–35 CE, after the defeat of Firuz Shah in c. 1420 CE. H. Talara Watchman. Bahmani Sultanate, c. 1347–1527 CE. In the 14th century, along with Vijayanagar kingdom, another powerful kingdom arose in South India, which was the Bahmani Sultanate. As we can recall that, the Deccan region was a part of the provincial administration of the Delhi Sultanate. In order to establish a stable administration in the Deccan, Mohammed bin Tughlaq appointed Amir-i Sadr, also known as Sadr Amir, administrative heads of 100 villages. From c. 1337 CE, the conflict between the officers in Deccan and Delhi Sultanate accelerated, which ultimately resulted in the establishment of an independent state in the Deccan in c. 1347 CE with the capital at Gulbarga in Andhra Pradesh. Its founder, Hassan Gangu, assumed the title Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah, as he traced his descent from the mythical hero of Iran, Bahman Shah, and the kingdom was named the Bahmani Sultanate after him. Since after Mohammed bin Tughlaq there were no attempts by the Delhi Sultanate to control the Deccan region, therefore, the Bahmani sultans without any checks annexed the other parts of the kingdom too. One of the important acquisitions was the control over Dabhol, an important port on the west coast. Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah, c. 1347–58 CE, founder of the Bahmani Sultanate, who was an Afghan adventurer, who began his career as a general serving under the Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Nasir ad-Din Ismail Shah, who had revolted against the Delhi Sultanate, stepped down in favor of Bahman Shah. However, according to the historian Ferishta, his original name was Hassan Gangu, as he had earlier served in the service of a Brahmana named Gangu, and he adopted the word Barman Shah as a tribute to his Brahmana patron. He had regular confrontations with the Vijayanagar kingdom and Warangal state. He led his first campaign against Warangal in c. 1350 CE and forced its ruler Kapaya Nayaka to cede to him the fortress of Kaulas. By the time of his death, the kingdom stretched from north to south from the Wenganga River to Krishna and east to west from Bonga to Daulatabad. Muhammad Shah I, c. 1358-1377 CE. Tajuddin Firoz Shah, c. 1397-1422 CE, considered as the most remarkable figure in the Bahmani Sultanate and greatest of them all. He started the Bahmani expansion towards Berar by defeating the Gond Raja Narsingh Rai of Kurla. A huge amount of money, gold, and silver was paid to Firuz, and a daughter of Rai was married to him. Later, he invaded Vijayanagar with victories in c. 1398 CE and c. 1408 CE, but faced a defeat in c. 1420 CE at the hands of Deva Raya I. He was well acquainted with the religious sciences, commentaries on the Quran, jurisprudence, and natural sciences too, such as botany, geometry, logic, etc. Was a good calligraphist and a poet, and often composed extempore verses. According to Ferishta, he was well versed not only in Telugu, Kannada, and Marathi but also in Persian, Arabic, and Turkish. He encouraged the pursuit of astronomy and built an observatory near Daulatabad. Inducted a large number of Hindus in his administration. It is said that it was from his time that the Deccan Brahmins became dominant in administration. Ahmad Shah Wali, c. 1422-35 CE, after the defeat of Firuz Shah in c. 1420 CE, he was forced to abdicate in favor of his brother Ahmed Shah I, who is called a saint, Wali, on account of his association with the famous Sufi saint Jisudaras. He continued the struggle for the domination of the southeastern seaboard, and in order to punish the ruler of Warangal for siding with the Vijayanagar in the previous battle, he invaded Warangal, c. 1424-1425 CE, and defeated and killed its ruler and annexed most of its territories. After this, he turned his attention toward Malwa, c. 1425-1435 CE, Gondwana, and the Konkan. He shifted the capital from Gulbarga to Bida. Humayun Shah, c. 1458-1461 CE, greatly impressed with his military genius, Humayun appointed Mahmud Gawan, who later emerged as one of the most important personality of the Bahmani kingdom, as minister who initiated many reforms. After Humayun's death, Gawan became the guardian of his minor prince Nizam Shah, c. 1461-1463 CE, and had the reins of the government in his hands. However, the young sultan died in c. 1463 CE, and his brother Muhammad Shah III, who was aged only 9 years, c. 1463-1482 CE, succeeded him, and Mahmud Gawan served as his prime minister. The power of the Bahmani kingdom reached its peak under the rule of Muhammad Shah III, all due to the advice and services of Mahmud Gawan. It extended from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. On the west, it extended from Goa to Bombay. On the east, it extended from Kakinada to the mouth of the river Krishna. The history of Bahmani kingdom after this period is actually the record of the achievements of Mahmud Gawan. Mahmud Gawan, c. 1461-1481 CE, the Bahmani kingdom reached the height of its power and territorial limits under the able guidance of Mahmud Gawan. He was a Persian merchant who came to India, Deccan, at the age of 42 years and joined the services of Bahmani kingdom. He was granted the title of Malik-ul-Tujar, i.e., chief of the merchants by the Bahmani ruler, Humayun Shah. The sudden death of Humayun led to the coronation of his minor son Nizam Shah, and a regency council was set for the administration of which Mahmud Gawan was an important member. Slowly, due to his personal qualities, he was made Wazir, the prime minister, and was given the title of Khwaja-i-Jahan. He was a learned person and possessed a great knowledge of mathematics. He not only controlled the kingdom in an efficient manner but also provided stability to it. Gawan carried out many internal administrative reforms and attempted to put an end to the strife in the nobility and to increase the control of Sultan over the nobles and provinces. He divided the kingdom into 8 tariffs or provinces, each governed by a tarafdar. In order to curb the military power of the tarafdar, Gawan ordered that only 1/4 of each province was to be under the direct control of the provincial tarafdar. The remaining forts of the province were placed under a killadar or commander of the forts, who was appointed by the central government. Allowances of the nobles were also reduced who shirked their responsibility. He was a military genius and waged successful wars against Vijayanagar, Orissa, and the sea pirates on the Arabian Sea. He conquered the Vijayanagar territories up to Kankai. On the western coast, Goa and Dabhol were conquered. After gaining control over Goa and Dabhol, Bahmani strengthened its trading relations with Iran and Iraq. He introduced the use of gunpowder in the war against the Vijayanagar kings in Belgaum and invited Persian chemists to teach his soldiers the preparation and use of gunpowder. He also tried to settle the northern frontiers of the kingdom. With the help of the ruler of Gujarat, he defeated Mahmud Khalji of Malwa over the control of Berar. Thus, he expanded the Bahmani Empire through his conquests and diplomacy skills. He was a great patron of arts and made endowments to build a college at Bida which was built in the Persian style of architecture. Some of the most famous scholars of the time belonging to Iran and Iraq came to this madrasa. One of the most difficult problems faced by the Bahmani kingdom was strife among nobles. The nobles were divided into Deccanus, old-timers, and Afakis, newcomers. Despite of being an Afaki, Gawan was liberal and wanted a compromise between the Afakis and the Deccanus. But unfortunately, the petty strife could not be stopped and the Deccani nobles plotted against Gawan and induced the young sultan to punish him with a death sentence and had him executed in c.1482 CE. Later, the sultan regretted his hasty decision and buried his prime minister with honors. After Gawan's execution, the Bahmani kingdom began to disintegrate and the provincial governors declared their independence. During this period, the Vijayanagar king Krishna Deva Raya defeated the last remnant of the Bahmani Sultanate's power, after which the Bahmani Sultanate collapsed. After c.1518 CE, the Sultanate broke up into 5 states, the Nizam Shohis of Ahmadnagar, the Adil Shohis of Bijapur, the Kup Shohis of Golconda, and the Imad Shohis of Berar and the Barid Shohis of Bida, which are collectively known as the Deccan Sultanates. Sultanates. Nizam Shohis of Ahmadnagar founded by Ahmed Bori. 2. Annexed by Shah Jahan. Adil Shohis of Bijapur founded by Yusuf Adil Shah Mode. Adil Shah built the world's second largest dome, Gol Gumbaz of Bijapur. Gol Gumbaz, Bijapur. Another prominent ruler was Ibrahim Adil Shah II, c.1580-1627 CE, the 5th king of the dynasty, known for religious tolerance and was given title of Jagadguru Budshah owing to his belief in secularism. He tried to bring in cultural harmony between the Shias and the Sunnis and between Hindus and Muslims through music. He was a great lover of music, played musical instruments, sang and composed praises of Hindu deities Saraswati and Ganapati. He wrote the book Kitab-i Navraz, Book of 9 Rosas, in Dakkani. He 3, 4, 5. A. Maintained a large number of musicians, around 400, at his court, and the band of musicians was known as Lashkar-e-Nauraz, Army of Nauraz, as they were paid by the government regularly. Annexed by Aurangzeb. Imad Shohis of Berar founded by Fatullah Khan. Imad ul Mulk later conquered by Nizam Shohi rulers of Ahmadnagar. Qutb Shohis of Golconda founded by Tsuli Qutb Shah, who built the famous Golconda fort. Mode. Tsuli Qutb Shah, greatest of all Qutb Shohi, who built the city of Hyderabad and Charminar. Kingdom annexed by Aurangzeb. Barid Shohis of Bida founded by Ali Barid. Annexed by Adil Shohis of Bijapur. Of these, the kingdoms of Ahmadnagar, Bijapur, and Golconda played a leading role in the Deccan politics till their absorption in the Mughal Empire during the 17th century. Conflict between the Vijayanagar kingdom and Bahmani Sultanate. There were constant conflicts between the Vijayanagar kingdom and the Bahmani Sultanate as their interests clashed in 3 separate and distinct areas, over the control of the Racha Doab, between rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra. This area was fertile and rich in mineral resources. The famous diamond mines of Golconda were located in the eastern part of the Doab region. The geography of both the kingdoms was such that expansion was possible only across Tungabhadra in the Deccan. It appears that the battles between the two were not conclusive and the status quo was mostly B. C. maintained. Sometimes, Bahmani had an advantage and sometimes, Vijayanagar had an advantage. For instance, in c.1504 CE, the Bahmanis managed to reconquer the Racha Doab. However, with the ascent of Krishna Deva Raya, the Bahmanis lost Racha, Mudkal, Nalgonda, and other inland towns. As we have discussed earlier too, that the Racha Doab had been the bone of contention between the western Chalukyas and the Cholas in the earlier period and between the Yadavas and the Hoysalas in the later period. The Krishna-Godavari basin, apart from being very fertile, this region had the additional advantage of control of foreign trade, as this stretch of land contained numerous important ports that held the priced key of foreign trade. Over the Marathwada region, in the Marathwada region, the main contention was for the control of the Konkan belt, a narrow strip of land between the Western Ghats and the sea, and the areas which gave access to it. The Konkan belt was extremely fertile and included with it the port of Goa, which was an important outlet for export as well as import, especially of horses from Iraq and Iran. Often, the battles between the Vijayanagar and the Bahmani states are perceived as Hindu-Muslim conflicts. However, the aforementioned reasons clearly point out that the struggle was not due to any religious differences but for territorial and economic motives. These military conflicts resulted in widespread devastation of the contested areas and the neighboring territories and a considerable loss of life and property. Continuous warfare exhausted the resources of both the states and weakened them. Another crucial cost of these wars was that both the powers were so involved amongst themselves that they never realized the increasing power of the Portuguese on the coast of South India. It is also significant to mention that despite hostilities between the two states, there were times when they also cooperated with each other. For instance, Krishna Deva Raya supported some claimants to power in the sultanates and took pride in the title establisher of the Yavana kingdom. Similarly, the Sultan of Bijapur intervened to resolve succession disputes in Vijayanagar following the death of Krishna Deva Raya. There was also sharing and exchange of ideas, especially in the field of art, literature, and architecture. Bahmani administration. The Bahmani administrative system was well organized. The Sultanate was divided into four. Before Gawan divided the Sultanate into 8 units, administrative units called Tarif or provinces. These provinces were Daulatabad, Bida, Berar, and Gulbarga. Muhammad I defeated the Vijayanagar kingdom and consequently Golconda was annexed to Bahmani Sultanate. Every province was under a Tarifdar who was also called a Subaydar. In every province, a tract of land, Khalisa, was set apart from the jurisdiction of the Tarifdar as it was used for meeting the expenses of the king and the royal household. Further, the salaries and obligations of every noble was fixed. Those nobles who kept 500 horses were given 1,000 huns annually. If they were short of the stipulated troops, the Tarifdar had to reimburse the amount to the central government. Nobles used to get their salary either in cash or in form of grant of land or jagir. The Bahmanis were familiar with the use of firearms and they employed Turkish and Portuguese experts to train the soldiers in the latest weaponry of warfare. Bahmani rulers depended for military support on his emirs. There were two groups in the ranks of emirs. One was the Deccanese who were immigrant Muslims and had been staying for a long time in the Deccan region, and the other was the Afakis or Pardesis who had come from Central Asia, Iran, and Iraq, and had settled in the Deccan region recently. There was always tension between these groups to appropriate better administrative positions. Because of their internal feuds, the stability of the Bahmani Sultanate was d. Sadar I Jahan, head of judiciary and each other. For instance, Krishna Deva Raya supported some claimants to power in the sultanates and took pride in the title establisher of the Yavana kingdom. Similarly, the Sultan of Bijapur intervened to resolve succession disputes in Vijayanagar following the death of Krishna Deva Raya. There was also sharing and exchange of ideas, especially in the field of art, literature, and architecture. Bahmani administration. The Bahmani administrative system was well organized. The Sultanate was divided into four. Before Gawan divided the Sultanate into 8 units, administrative units called Tarif or provinces. These provinces were Daulatabad, Bida, Berar, and Gulbarga. Muhammad I defeated the Vijayanagar kingdom and consequently Golconda was annexed to Bahmani Sultanate. Every province was under a Tarifdar who was also called a Subaydar. In every province, a tract of land, Khalisa, was set apart from the jurisdiction of the Tarifdar as it was used for meeting the expenses of the king and the royal household. Further, the salaries and obligations of every noble was fixed. Those nobles who kept 500 horses were given 1,000 huns annually. If they were short of the stipulated troops, the Tarifdar had to reimburse the amount to the central government. Nobles used to get their salary either in cash or in form of grant of land or jagir. The Bahmanis were familiar with the use of firearms and they employed Turkish and Portuguese experts to train the soldiers in the latest weaponry of warfare. Bahmani rulers depended for military support on his emirs. There were two groups in the ranks of emirs. One was the Deccanese who were immigrant Muslims and had been staying for a long time in the Deccan region, and the other was the Afakis or Pardesis who had come from Central Asia, Iran, and Iraq, and had settled in the Deccan region recently. There was always tension between these groups to appropriate better administrative positions. Because of their internal feuds, the stability of the Bahmani Sultanate was affected as we just discussed in the execution of Mahmud Gawan. Key term meaning A. Wazir I Kol Prime Minister B. Amir I Kol Finance Head C. Wazir Ashraf Foreign Affairs and Royal Court. D. Sadar I Jahan, head of judiciary and charities E. Tarifdar, head of province. Western India Gujarat. Morwa and Muir. Gujarat. Gujarat was one of the richest provinces of the Delhi Sultanate on account of its handicrafts, fertile lands, and flourishing seaports. Alauddin Khalji was the first sultan to annex it to Delhi Sultanate, c. 1297 CE, and since then it remained under the Turkish governors of the Sultanate. Under Firoz Tughlaq, Gujarat had a benign governor who, according to the historian Ferishta, was highly liberal and encouraged the Hindu religion to a great extent. He was succeeded by Zafar Khan, whose father Satharan was a Rajput who converted to Islam, and had given his sister in marriage to Firoz Tughlaq. After Timur's invasion, in c. 1407 CE, Zafar Khan, who was then the governor, proclaimed himself an independent ruler. He assumed the title of Muzaffar Shah and founded the Muzaffarid dynasty. Muzaffar Shah Zafar Khan, c. 1407-1411 CE. Ahmed Shah, c. 1411-1441 CE, grandson of Muzaffar Shah, who was the real founder of the Kingdom of Gujarat as he not only controlled the Shah was followed by two weak rulers. Later, nobles raised Fatih Khan, a grandson of Ahmed Shah, to the throne. He took the title Mahmud Baghara and was the ablest ruler of his dynasty. Mahmud Baghara, the city of the administration, nobility and settled the administration, but also expanded and consolidated the kingdom. He tried to extend his control over Rajput states in the Saurashtra region, Guinea, as well as those located on the Gujarat-Rajasthan border such as Jalawar, Bundi, and Dungapur. He also attacked Sidhpur, the famous Hindu pilgrimage center, and destroyed many beautiful temples. It is rather interesting to note that even though he pertained to be an orthodox Muslim who imposed jizya on the Hindus in Gujarat and destroyed several temples, quite oppositely, he appointed Hindus to important administrative positions. For instance, his two ministers Monik Chand and Moti Chand both were Hindus. He fought equally fiercely against Hindu as well as Muslim rulers. His archenemies were the Muslim rulers of Morwa. The rivalry between Gujarat and Morwa was bitter and prevented both the regional states from concentrating on larger political gains in North Indian politics. Founded the city of Ahmedabad and made it his capital in c. 1413 CE, shifted earlier capital from Patan. Influenced by the Jaina architectural traditions of Gujarat, having exquisite features of slender turrets, exquisite stone carving, and highly ornate brackets, he built beautiful buildings like the Jaini Masjid, c. 1423 CE, and Teen Darwaza, and beautified the city with gardens, palaces, and bazaars. He was also noted for imparting justice. For instance, he publicly executed his son-in-law who had murdered an innocent man. After the death of Ahmed Shah in c. 1441 CE, his eldest son Muhammad Shah ascended the throne, who was also known as Zarboksh. However, in c. 1451 CE, he was killed by conspirators. Muhammad Shah was followed by two weak rulers. Later, nobles raised Fatih Khan, a grandson of Ahmed Shah, to the throne. He took the title Mahmud Baghara and was the ablest ruler of his dynasty. Mahmud Baghara, c. 1459-1511 CE, the most important ruler of Gujarat, under whom the Gujarat kingdom reached its maximum limit and emerged as one of the most powerful and well-administered states in the country. He was called Baghara as he had captured two powerful forts or Ghars, Gina, Junagadh, in Saurashtra and the fort of Champaner from the Rajputs in South Gujarat. However, according to another version, he was called Baghara as his moustaches resembled the horns of a cow. The strategic fort of Gina was suitable not only for administering Saurashtra but also provided a base for operations against Sindh. Mahmud founded a new town called Mustafabad at the foot of the hill, which had many beautiful monuments and later became the second capital of Gujarat. Similarly, he besieged the fort of Champaner, which was crucial to control Morwa and Khandesh. Here too, Mahmud constructed a new town called Muhammadabad near Champaner and laid out many fine gardens. Mahmud sacked Dwarka primarily to check the menace of pirates who preyed on the pilgrims travelling to Mecca. In c. 1507 CE, Mahmud led an expedition against the Portuguese, who had settled on the western coast, to break their trade monopoly, which was causing immense harm to the Muslim traders. For this, he sought help of the ruler of Egypt but he was unsuccessful and finally he had to give the Portuguese a site for a factory in Diu. Morwa was the southwestern province of. During his reign, trade and commerce prospered. He constructed many caravanserais and inns for the comfort of the travellers and tried to maintain roads safe for traffic. Though he himself had never received systematic education, yet he was a great patron of art and literature. Many works were translated from Arabic to Persian during his reign. His court poet was the Sanskrit scholar, Udayaraja, who wrote a book called the Raja Vinoda on Mahmud Bagorha. Interestingly, Mahmud had a striking appearance as he had a flowing beard, which reached up to his waist, and his moustache was so long that he tied it over his head. According to Barbosa, Mahmud was given some poison right from his childhood, so if a fly settled on his hand, it meant instant death. He was also famous for his huge appetite. Gujarat was annexed by Akbar in c. 1573 CE. Morwa. Morwa was the southwestern province of the Delhi Sultanate, which was conquered by Alauddin Khalji in c. 1310 CE and remained the part of the Delhi Sultanate till the death of Firoz Tughlaq. It had a very strategic position as it was situated on the high plateau between the rivers Narmada and Tapti and hence commanded the trunk routes between Gujarat and northern India, as also between North and South India. So if any of the powerful states of the region could extend its control over Morwa, it could dominate North India. After the invasion of Timur, in c. 1401 CE, Dilawar Khan Ghori, who belonged to the court of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, threw off his allegiance to Delhi, though he did not take the royal title of Sultan. Dilawar shifted the capital from Lotamandu, renaming it Shadiabad, the city of joy, which was highly defensible and which had a great deal of natural beauty. After the death of Dilawar Khan in c. 1405 CE, his son Alp Khan ascended the throne and acquired the title of Hosham Shah. Hosham Shah, c. 1406-35 CE, was the first formally appointed Islamic king of Morwa who was a bold and ambitious ruler. An interesting account of his boldness could be ascertained by his rather unconventional way of obtaining the finest elephants from Odisha in c. 1421 CE, when the king of Odisha had refused to send him the best elephants. He himself along with 1,000 soldiers reached Jajja in Odisha and disguised themselves as merchants of other things, including the king's favourite horses. When the king came to inspect the horses, Hosham Shah's soldiers captured him and he let him free only after the king promised to gift 100 of the very best elephants and to let him out of Odisha safely. Despite being a warrior, he had a sympathetic heart and was dearly loved by his subjects. He adopted a broad policy of religious toleration as evident from the inscription of the Lalitpur temple which belonged to this period. It specifies that no restrictions were placed on the construction of temples. He also encouraged many Rajputs to settle in Morwa and extended his patronage to the Jains who were the principal commercial merchants and bankers of the area. For instance, 2 of the elder brothers of Rana Mokal of Newa were granted jagirs in Morwa, and Nadi Vasoni, a successful merchant, was his treasurer and advisor. He is also remembered for his wonderful taste in architecture. It was he who made Mandu one of the most impregnable forts of India. Hoshangabad in Madhya Pradesh, earlier called Narmadapur, was founded by Hosham Shah. Mahmud Khalji, c. 1436-1469 CE. Jahaz Mahal crowned Mahmud Shah II, circa 1510-1531 CE. Khalji dynasty of Morwa, who surrendered to Bahadur Shah, the Sultan of Gujarat, after he lost the fort of Mandu in c. 1531 CE. During c. 1531-1537 CE, the kingdom was under the control of Bahadur Shah, though the Mughal emperor Humayun captured it for a short period during c. 1535-36 CE. In c. 1537 CE, Qadi Shah, an ex-officer of the previous Khalji dynasty, regained control over a part of the erstwhile kingdom. But in c. 1542 CE, Shir Shah Suri conquered the kingdom, defeating him and appointed Shujat Khan as the governor. His son, Baz Bahadur, declared himself independent in c. 1555 CE. Baz Bahadur, c. 1555-1561 CE, was the last sultan of Morwa, who was noted for his gift of music and poetry, and is known for his romantic liaison with Queen Rupmati. In c. 1561 CE, Akbar's army led by Adham Khan and Pir Muhammad Khan attacked Morwa and defeated Baz Bahadur in the Battle of Sarangpur. One of the reasons for Adham Khan's attack seems to be his love for Rani Rupmati. Rani Rupmati poisoned herself. Upon hearing of the fall of Mandu and Baz Bahadur fled to Khandesh. Akbar soon recalled Adham Khan and handed over command to Pir Muhammad, who attacked Khandesh and proceeded up to Burhanpur, but was soon defeated and killed by a coalition of 3 powers, Miran Mubarak Shah II of Khandesh, Tufal Khan of Berar, and Baz Bahadur. The Confederate army pursued the Mughals and drove them out of Morwa, and thus Baz Bahadur regained his kingdom for a brief period. However, in 1562 CE, Akbar sent another army led by Abdullah Khan which finally defeated Baz Bahadur, who fled to Chitta. He thus remained a fugitive at a number of courts until he surrendered in c. 1570 CE to Akbar at Nagar and Morwa thus became a Suba of the Mughal Empire. Among the many buildings of splendid architectural beauty built in the fortified city of Mandu, the Jami Masjid, which was planned and begun by Hoshan Shah and completed by Mahmud Khalji, the Hindola Mahal, the Jahaz Mahal, Hoshan Shah's tomb, and Baz Bahadur's and Rani Rupamati's palaces are worth a visit. It is pertinent to note that unlike the Gujarat style of architecture, the Mandu architecture was massive due to use of lofty plinth for the buildings, and there was large-scale use of coloured and glazed tiles which provided variety to the buildings. Mewa. Mewa or Udaipa Kingdom was originally called Medpath, and over time, the name Medpath became Mewa. Interestingly, the rulers of Mewa used the title Maharana, Prime Minister or Custodian, instead of the typical title Maharaja, King, as they believed themselves to be merely custodians of the Hindu civilization epitomized in the temple of their Lord Eklingaji, a manifestation of Lord Shiva, who was also called Medpateshwar, Lord of Medpath. The rise of Mewa during the 15th century was an important factor in the political life of North India. The power of the Chauhans in Rajasthan came to an end with the conquest of Ranthambore by Alauddin Khalji. After being overrun by the armies of Alauddin Khalji, Mewa had become relatively insignificant. Later in c. 1335 CE, Rana Hamayai, c. 1314-78 CE, established the second Guhila dynasty of Chitta and also became the progenitor of the Sisodia clan, a branch of the Guhilot clan, to which every succeeding Maharana of Mewa has belonged. He was the first ruler who started the use of title Rana and also built the Annapurna Mata temple, which is located in the Chittagong fort in Rajasthan. After the assassination of Rana Hamira's grandson, Maharana Moghul, his son Rana Kumbha ascended the throne of Mewa in c. 1433 CE. Chittagong fort with Victory Tower. Rana Kumbha, c. 1433-1468 CE, Rana Kumbha or Kumbhakarna Singh raised Mewa to the status of a power to be reckoned with and pulled it out of obscurity. He was a talented military commander and ruler who made his mark in the political as well as cultural field. After cautiously consolidating his position with great diplomacy and defeating his internal rivals, Rana Kumbha conquered states like Bundi, Kota, Chatsu, Malpura, Amba, Dungapur, etc. Majority of these states accepted the suzerainty of Rana Kumbha and came under his political influence. He also annexed Sampur, Didwana, Mandore, Nagar, Ranthambore, Sirahi, Gagran, Arma, Mandalgarh, Arbu, Toda, etc. to his kingdom. Rana Kumbha and Sultan Mahmud Khalji of Morwa had a history of tussle. Rana Kumbha had given shelter to a rival of Mahmud Khalji and even attempted to install him on the throne of Morwa. In retaliation, Mahmud Khalji gave shelter and active encouragement to some of the rivals of the Rana, such as his brother Moghul. As we have discussed above, Rana Kumbha and Mahmud Khalji fought against each other, and interestingly, both sides. It is rather admirable of Rana Kumbha that although claimed victory, Kumbha erected a victory tower at Chitta, a mark of victory of his conquests. He also consolidated the fortification of Chitta and constructed a road running through its 7 doors. Victory Tower. It is rather admirable of Rana Kumbha that although he was sorely pressed from all sides, he was largely able to maintain his position in Mewa. Though Kumbhalgarh was besieged a couple of times by Gujarat forces, and Mahmud Khalji was able to raid us by Maharana Rima and install Fineland as Arma and install his own governor, Rana was able to repulse these attacks and retain possession of most of his conquests with the exception of some of the outlying areas such as Ranthambore. He was a great patron of art and literature and a great musician himself. He was a great veena player. He was acclaimed as Sanjit Shiromani and wrote an outstanding treatise on Indian music titled Sanjit Raj as well as other works like Sanjit Mimansa, Sanjit Ratnaka, and Sud Prabandh. He also patronized great scholars such as Mahesh and Atri, the composers of the inscriptions of Victory Tower. He constructed the city of Basantpur. He built several inns, palaces, ponds, schools, and temples. For the defense of the kingdom, he built 5 forts of Kumbhalgarh, Achalgarh, Maddan, Kalana, and Virat. He also gave patronage to many craftsmen and sculptors. Unfortunately, he was murdered by his own son Uday in order to gain the throne. Uday was however ousted by Maharana Raimal, who was the younger son of Rana Kumbha. Later, after another unfortunate, long fratricidal conflict with his brothers, Rana Sanga, son of Raimal, became the ruler of Mewa. Rana Sanga, c. 1508-1528 CE, originally called Songram Singh, the grandson of Rana Kumbha, was a ferocious and brave Rajput ruler who fought several battles. He was a man of indomitable spirit and despite losing one arm, one eye, and numerous other grave injuries, he carried on with great valor and established his supremacy over almost all Rajput states in Rajasthan. He was more of a visionary than a warrior. After the fall of the Gurjara Pratihara kingdom, Rajputs all over northern India had broken up into various factions, squabbling and quarrelling among themselves, but he united the various factions under his able leadership. After first consolidating his power at Mewar, Rana Sanga moved his army against the internally troubled neighbouring kingdom of Malwa, as during this period Malwa was disintegrating. The ruler of Malwa, Mahmud II, was wary of his rival Rajput Waisa Medini Rai's power, so he sought assistance from both Sultan Ibrahim Lodi of Delhi and Bahadur Shah of Gujarat. Rai, on his part, requested Sanga to come to his aid. Joined by Rajput rebels from within Malwa, Sanga's troops from Mewar not only defeated Malwa's army but also their supporting troops from Delhi. Thus, Malwa fell under Rana's military power. His chivalry was reflected when he treated Sultan Mahmud with generosity and restored his kingdom even when he was defeated and taken as a prisoner by Rana. He also defeated the Delhi Sultan Ibrahim Lodi in c. 1518 CE at Gatoli, near Gwalior. Lodi, reportedly stunned by this Rajput aggression, moved again against Sanga's army in c. 1519 CE, but was humbled again at Dolpa. Lodi thus fought Sanga repeatedly, only to be defeated each time, losing much of his land in Rajasthan, while the boundaries of Sanga's military influence came to extend within striking distance of Agra. According to some legends, it was on the invitation of Rana Sanga that Babur invaded India in c. 1526 CE. But just after a year, Rana Sanga fought against Babur in the famous Battle of Kanwa near Fate Pasikri, c. 1527 CE. The Rajput forces of Rana Sanga, supplemented by the contingents of Hassan Khan Mawati and the Afghan Mahmud Lodi and Raja Medini Rai of Alwar, fought against Babur. The battle, which lasted for not more than 10 hours, was bitterly contested and became an exceedingly brutal affair. At a critical moment of battle, the defection of Silhadi and his contingent caused a split in the Rajput forces. Rana Sanga, while trying to rebuild his front, was wounded and fell unconscious from his horse. The Rajput army thought their leader was dead and fled in disorder, thus allowing the Mughals to win. Rana Sanga was whisked away to safety by the Rothor contingent from Marwar. Unwilling to admit defeat, he set out once more to rebuild his military and renew war with Babur. He vowed not to set foot in Chitta till Babur was defeated by him. In c. 1528 CE, he again fought Babur at Battle of Chandari to help Medini Rai, who was attacked by Babur. But, he fell sick at Kalpai and died in his camp. It is speculated that he was poisoned by some of his nobles who thought that his renewal of war with Babur was suicidal. It is pertinent to note that poet, saint and passionate devotee of Lord Krishna, the legendary Mirabai, was the daughter-in-law of Maharana Sanga, and Maharana Pratap II belonged to his lineage. North India, Kashmir. In Rajataranjani, a history of Kashmir written by Kalhana in the mid-12th century, it is stated that the valley of Kashmir was formerly a lake. According to Hindu mythology, the lake was drained by the great rishi or sage, Kashyapa, son of Marikai, who in his turn was the son of Brahma, by cutting the gap in the hills at Baramula, Varahamula. When Kashmir had been drained, Kashyapa asked Brahmins to settle there, and thus Kashmir Valley was settled by Hindus in the initial phases. The beautiful kingdom of Kashmir was for long a forbidden land for all outsiders. Al-Bayuni, the famous Arab traveller, remarked in his work Ul-Hind that entry into Kashmir was not allowed even to the Hindus who were not known personally to the local nobles. In the 11th century, the rulers were followers of Shaivism, and Shaivism was the central religion in Kashmir. The oppressive taxation, corruption, internecine fights, and rise of the Damoras, feudal lords, during the unpopular rule of the Lohara dynasty, c. 1003 to 1320 CE, paved way for foreign invasions of Kashmir. In c. 1320 CE, Suhadeva, the last king of the Lohara dynasty, fled Kashmir after Zulju, Dalucha, a Turkic Mongol chief, led a savage raid on Kashmir. Zulju massacred the civilian population on a mass scale and did a lot of destruction. The hapless Kashmir government could offer no opposition and thus lost all credibility and public support. So, in c. 1339 CE, Shamsuddin Shah deposed the Shoiva ruler and became the ruler of Kashmir, and from this period onwards, Islam started influencing the Kashmiri society. A group of Sufi saints known as the Rishis propagated a religion that combined features of Hinduism and Islam. For instance, Islamic preacher Sheikh Nuruddin Noani, who is traditionally revered by Hindus as Nand Rishi, combined elements of Kashmir Shaivism with Sufi mysticism in his discourses. Thus, in the 14th century, under the influence of Sufi saints like Noani, Islam gradually became the dominant religion in Kashmir. Shamshuddin Shah Mir, c. 1339-1342 CE, was the founder of the Shah Miri dynasty and was the first Muslim ruler of Kashmir. Sikandar Shah, c. 1389-1413 CE. All other sultans between c. 1354-1470 CE were tolerant of other religions, but Sultan Sikandar was an exception who was more of an iconoclast. He imposed taxes on non-Muslims, forced conversions to Islam, and earned the title But Shakan for destroying idols. The state encouragement to Islam took an extreme turn during his reign as he issued an order that all Hindus, especially the Brahmanas living in his kingdom, should embrace Islam or leave his kingdom. And it is conceived that these orders were issued bookbinding. Under his rule, the arts of wood carving, stone cutting and polishing, bottle making, gold beating, received that these orders were issued at the instance of his minister, Suhabat, who was earlier a Hindu but had converted to Islam, and was bent on harassing his former co-religionists. After the death of Sikandar Shah, his son Ali Shah, c. 1413-1419 CE, ascended the throne, and after some years his brother Shah Khan ascended the throne under the title of Zainul Abidin. Zainul Abidin, circa 1420-1470 CE, known as Bud Shah, the Great Sultan, and as Akbar of Kashmir, who was benevolent, liberal, and an enlightened ruler. He reversed all the negative and bigoted policies of Sikandar Shah and brought back all the non-Muslims who had fled. He allowed the freedom to revert back to Hinduism to all those who were forcibly converted under any pressure. He even restored their liberties, abolished jizya, and prohibited cow slaughter. As noted by Abulfazl more than 100 years later, Kashmir had 150 majestic temples. And it is most likely that they must have been restored. Under Zainul Abidin, the Hindus occupied many high offices in his government. For instance, Shri Abat was a minister of justice and court physician. Even Zainul's first two queens were Hindus, being the daughters of the Raja of Jammu. Though not a great warrior, he defeated the Mongol invasion of Ladakh, conquered the Baltistan area, called Tibetai-Kurd, and kept control over Jammu, Rajaury, etc., and thus unified the Kashmiri kingdom. He paid great attention towards the economic growth of Kashmir. The Sultan not only invited artists and craftsmen from Central Asia and Persia to train local artists in Kashmir but also sent 2 persons to Samarkand to learn the arts of papermaking and Masjid in Kashmir completed by Zainul Abidin is similar to Buddhist pagodas with Pershing. Under his rule, the arts of wood carving, stone cutting and polishing, bottle making, gold beating, musket making, art of manufacturing fireworks, shawl and carpet weaving prospered. He contributed to the agricultural development of Kashmir by constructing dams and canals and initiated the maintenance of the agricultural records. During the period of famine and other natural calamities, relief in terms of loans and grains and fodder was provided to the peasants. He also introduced reforms in the currency, market control, and fixed prices of the commodities. The Sultan also subsidized the import of the commodities that were scarce in the state. For instance, to make up for the shortage of salt, he imported salt from Ladakh and helped the traders in every possible way. He got built Zaina Lanka, the artificial island in the Wooler Lake on which he built his palace and a mosque. He also founded the towns of Zaingir, Zainkit, and Zainpur. The striking feature of the Jama Masjid in Kashmir completed by Zainul Abidin is similar to Buddhist pagodas with Persian style and also includes turrets in its architecture. Jama Masjid, Srinagar. He himself was a great scholar of Persian, Sanskrit, Tibetan, and Kashmiri language and wrote poetry under the pen name Cup. He also gave patronage to Sanskrit and Persian scholars, and under his patronage, the Mahabharat and Kalhana's Rajataranjani were translated into Persian and many Persian and Arabic works were translated into Hindi. He was also in touch with the leading rulers in other parts of not only India but Asia also. After him, weak rulers ascended the throne of Kashmir and there was confusion. Taking advantage of this, Mirza Hyder, a relative of Babur, occupied Kashmir. In c. 1586 CE, Akbar conquered Kashmir and made it a part of the Mughal Empire. Eastern India, Jaunpur, Bengal, Assam, and Orissa. Jaunpur. Jaunpur was a prosperous province in the eastern part of the Delhi Sultanate, near modern Varanasi on the banks of River Gomati. The governor of Jaunpur was Malik Sarwar, who was a prominent noble during Firoz Shah Tughlaq's period. In c. 1394 CE, Sultan Nasiruddin Muhammad Shah Tughlaq made him a minister and gave him the title of Sultan-u-Sharq, the Master of the East. Thereafter, he was known as Malik Sarwar Sultan-u-Sharq. After Timur's invasion and the weakening of the Delhi Sultanate, Malik Sarwar took advantage of a weak political situation and declared himself independent and extended his authority over Awadh and a large part of Ganga, Yamuna Doab such as Kanauj, Kara, Sandila, Dalmau, Borach, Bihar, and Tihat, Though Malik Sawa did not assume the title of Sultan, he laid down the foundation of the Shaki dynasty. Atala Masjid, Jaunpur. Jaunpur evolved a distinct architecture that is known as the Shaki style of architecture. Jaunpur was known as the Shiraz of India. Most notable examples of Shaki style of architecture in Jaunpur are the Atala Masjid, the Lal Darwaja Masjid, and the Jama Masjid. Malik Sawa, c. 1394-1399 CE, laid the foundation of the Shaki dynasty. His authority was recognized by the Rai of Jajnagar and the ruler of Lakhnauti too. After his death, he was succeeded by his adopted son Malik Karanful, who took the title of Mubarak Shah. Mubarak Shah, c. 1399-1402 CE, first ruler of Shaki dynasty. During his reign, Malu Iqbal, the powerful minister of the puppet Sultan of Delhi, Mahmud Tughlaq, tried to recover Jaunpur, but failed. The Lal Darwaja Masjid, c. 1450 CE, was built during the reign of the Mahmud Shah. Muhammad Shah, c. 1457-1458 CE, on assuming power in c. 1457 CE, he made peace with Balal Lodi and recognized his right over Shamsabad. In c. 1458 CE, when he got his brother Hassan executed, his other brother Hussein revolted and proclaimed himself as the Sultan of Jaunpur under the title of Hussein Shah, and killed Muhammad Shah. Hussein Shah Shaki, c. 1458-1505 CE, the last ruler of the Shaki dynasty, Hussein Shah, assumed the title of Gandharva and contributed significantly in the development of the Khyal, a genre of Hindustani classical music. He also composed several new ragas, melodies. Most notable among these are Malhar Syoma, Gau Syoma, Bhopal Syoma, Hussaini or Jaunpuri Osovary, presently known as Jaunpuri, and Jaunpuri Basant. It was during his reign that the Jama Masjid was built in c. 1470 CE and also a prolonged war with Balal Lodi started. Finally, Sikandar Lodi who succeeded Balal Lodi annexed Jaunpur. Hussein Shah died and the Shaki dynasty came to an end. Bengal. Bengal was an important regional kingdom under the Palas in the 8th century and the Senas in the 12th century. It was the easternmost province of the Delhi Sultanate. The long distance, uncomfortable climate, and poor means of transport and communications, as much of its communication depended upon waterways, made it difficult for the Delhi Sultanate to control this province. Though Bengal was annexed to the Delhi Sultanate, a number of times it gained its independence. For instance, if we look through the pages of history, during the last decade of the 12th century CE, Muhammad bin Bakhtiar annexed Bengal to the conquered territories of Muhammad Ghori. But after his death, his successors declared their independence with the support of the local people. Later, Balban forced Bengal to accept the sovereignty of Delhi and appointed his son Bura Khan as its governor. But after Balban's death, he declared his own independence. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq tried to solve this problem by partitioning Bengal into 3 independent administrative divisions, Lakhnauti, Satgaon, and Sonagaon. However, the problems remained as such. Muhammad bin Tughlaq tried to control Bengal, but in c. 1338 CE, when he was busy in suppressing rebellion in other parts of Sultanate, Bengal cut off its connection with Delhi. Finally, Bengal emerged as an independent regional state in the 14th century. In c. 1342 CE, one of the nobles, Haji Elias Khan, united Bengal and became its ruler and laid the foundation of the Elias Shah dynasty. The Bengal Sultanate, which ruled for around 125 years though in phases, established by Elias Shah emerged as one of the leading diplomatic, economic, and military powers in the subcontinent. Elias Shah and his successors embraced Indo-Aryanization and adapted themselves to Bengali culture and society. Their kingdom was a melting pot for migrants from across the Muslim world and played a key role in the development of Bengali Muslim society. Pandua and Gao, the capitals of Bengal, were adorned with magnificent buildings. While Persian was the language of administration, Bengali developed as a regional language. The celebrated poet Maladar Bosu, compiler of Sri Krishna Vijaya, was patronized by the sultans and was granted the title of Gunaraja Khan. His son was honored with the title of Satyaraja Khan. Later, another prominent Hussein Shahi dynasty came to fore and after a brief period of 44 years, Bengal came under the authority of Shir Shah Suri, one of the most able Sir rulers who even ousted the Mughal ruler Humayun from Delhi. Haji Shamshuddin Elias Khan, c. 1342-1357 CE. He was a popular ruler and organized an inclusive and pluralistic administration. It is said that when Firoz Shah Tughlaq was at Darwaja Masjid, c. 1450 CE, was built during the reign of the Mahmud Shah. Muhammad Shah, c. 1457-1458 CE, on assuming power in c. 1457 CE, he made peace with Balal Lodi and recognized his right over Shamsabad. In c. 1458 CE, when he got his brother Hassan executed, his other brother Hussein revolted and proclaimed himself as the Sultan of Jaunpur under the title of Hussein Shah, and killed Muhammad Shah. Hussein Shah Shaki, c. 1458-1505 CE, the last ruler of the Shaki dynasty, Hussein Shah, assumed the title of Gandharva and contributed significantly in the development of the Khyal, a genre of Hindustani classical music. He also composed several new ragas, melodies. Most notable among these are Malhasyoma, Gausyoma, Bhopalsyoma, Hussaini or Jaunpuri or Sovari, presently known as Jaunpuri, and Jaunpuri Basant. It was during his reign that the Jama Masjid was built in c. 1470 CE and also a prolonged war with Balal Lodi started. Finally, Sikandar Lodi who succeeded Balal Lodi annexed Jaunpur. Hussein Shah died and the Shaki dynasty came to an end. Bengal. Bengal was an important regional kingdom under the Palas in the 8th century and the Senas in the 12th century. It was the easternmost province of the Delhi Sultanate. The long distance, uncomfortable climate, and poor means of transport and communications, as much of its communication depended upon waterways, made it difficult for the Delhi Sultanate to control this province. Though Bengal was annexed to the Delhi Sultanate, a number of times it gained its independence. For instance, if we look through the pages of history, during the last decade of the 12th century CE, Muhammad bin Bakhtiar annexed Bengal to the conquered territories of Muhammad Ghori. But after his death, his successors declared their independence with the support of the local people. Later, Balban forced Bengal to accept the sovereignty of Delhi and appointed his son Bura Khan as its governor. But after Balban's death, he declared his own independence. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq tried to solve this problem by partitioning Bengal into 3 independent administrative divisions, Lakhnauti, Satgaon, and Sonagaon. However, the problems remained as such. Muhammad bin Tughlaq tried to control Bengal, but in c. 1338 CE, when he was busy in suppressing rebellion in other parts of Sultanate, Bengal cut off its connection with Delhi. Finally, Bengal emerged as an independent regional state in the 14th century. In c. 1342 CE, one of the nobles, Haji Elias Khan, united Bengal and became its ruler and laid the foundation of the Elias Shah dynasty. The Bengal Sultanate, which ruled for around 125 years though in phases, established by Elias Shah emerged as one of the leading diplomatic, economic, and military powers in the subcontinent. Elias Shah and his successors embraced Indo-Aryanization and adapted themselves to Bengali culture and society. Their kingdom was a melting pot for migrants from across the Muslim world and played a key role in the development of Bengali Muslim society. Pandua and Gao, the capitals of Bengal, were adorned with magnificent buildings. While Persian was the language of administration, Bengali developed as a regional language. The celebrated poet Maladar Bosu, compiler of Sri Krishna Vijaya, was patronized by the sultans and was granted the title of Gunaraja Khan. His son was honored with the title of Satya Raja Khan. Later, another prominent Hussein Shahi dynasty came to fore and after a brief period of 44 years, Bengal came under the authority of Shir Shah Suri, one of the most able rulers who even ousted the Mughal ruler Humayun from Delhi. Haji Shamshuddin Elias Khan, c. 1342-1357 CE. Founder of Elias Shah dynasty. His most important legacy is that he unified the independent kingdom of Bengal. He extended the dominions in the west from Tihat to Champaran and Gorakhpur, and finally up to Benares. This brought him in conflict with Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and to counter his increasing influence, Firoz Shah Tughlaq took Champaran and Gorakhpur and occupied the Bengali capital Pandua, and forced Elias to seek shelter in the strong fort of Ekdala. Elias Shah thus had to sign a treaty with Firoz Shah Tughlaq. According to this treaty, River Kosi was accepted as the boundary line between two kingdoms. With the establishment of friendly relations now with Delhi, Elias Shah was enabled to extend his control over the kingdom of Kamrupa, modern Assam. He tried to annex Bengal and raided Orissa and Tihat and forced them to pay tribute. His campaigns were thus considered world-conquering in the context of medieval Bengal, and Elias Shah has been described as the Bengali equivalent of Alexander or Napoleon. He was a popular ruler and organized an inclusive and pluralistic administration. It is said that when Firoz Shah Tughlaq was at Pandua, he tried to win over the inhabitants of the city to his side by giving liberal grants of land to the nobles, the clergy, and other deserving people, but due to immense popularity of Elias Shah, Firoz Shah could not succeed. Haji Ilyas died in c. 1357 CE and his son Sikandar succeeded the throne. During his reign too, Firoz Shah Tughlaq again tried to annex Bengal, but Sikandar followed the tactics of his father and retreated to Ekdala. Firoz once again failed and had to retreat. After this, Bengal was left alone for about 200 years and was not invaded again till c. 1538 CE after the Mughals had established their power at Delhi. Ghiyasuddin Azam, c. 1390-1411 CE. One of the important rulers of the Elias Shah dynasty who was known for his love for justice. It is said that once he accidentally killed a son of a widow who filed a complaint with Qazi. The Sultan, when summoned to the court, humbly appeared and paid fine imposed by the Qazi. At the end of the trial, Azam told the Qazi that had he not discharged his duties honestly, he would have had him beheaded. Azam was a learned man and had close relations with the famous learned men of his times, including the famous Persian poet, Hafiz of Shiraz. He also maintained cordial relations with China, and a prosperous trading relationship existed between Bengal and China during his reign. The port of Chittagong was an important trading center. He also sent and received Chinese envoy, and on request from the King of China, Azam also sent Buddhist monks to China. There was a brief spell of Hindu rule under Raja Ganesha, c. 1414-1435 CE, but later the rule of Elias Shahi dynasty was restored by Nasiruddin Mahmud Shah and his successors, c. 1435-1487 CE. However, for a short period of 7 years, the Habshis came to rule over Bengal, c. 1487-1494 CE, who were then overthrown by Alauddin Hussein Shah. He later proved to be one of the most remarkable rulers of Bengal. Alauddin Hussein Shah, c. 1494-1519 CE, founder of the Hussein Shahi dynasty, c. 1494-1538 CE. He is considered as the greatest of all the sultans of Bengal, as under him, not only did Bengal frontiers expand, but he also brought a cultural renaissance in Bengal, and the Bengali language enriched a lot. He conquered Kamarupa, Kamata, Jajnagar, and Orissa, and extended the sultanate all the way to the port of Chittagong, which witnessed the arrival of the first Portuguese merchants. He was very efficient, liberal, and gave high administrative posts to Hindus. For instance, his Wazir, chief physician, chief bodyguard, master of mint, were all talented Hindus. He also paid great respect to the Vaishnavite Saint Chaitanya. Even his private secretary Sanatan was a celebrated pious Vaishnava, as was his brother Rupa. He came into conflict with Sikandar Lodi and had to make peace with him. On his death, in c. 1518 CE, his son Nazib Khan ascended the throne under the title of Nasiruddin Nawrat Shah. Nasiruddin Nawrat Shah, c. 1518-1533 CE, he married Ibrahim Lodi's daughter and gave refuge to the Afghan lords. During the invasion of Baber, however, he remained neutral. Later, Nawrat Shah made a treaty with Baber and saved Bengal from a Mughal invasion. He continued his father's expansionist policies, adding more territory to his sultanate early on in his reign, but after c. 1526 CE he had to contend with the Mughal ascendancy, and also suffered a reversal at the hands of the Ahom kingdom. He was succeeded by his son Alauddin Firuz Shah, under whose reign the Bengal army entered Assam and reached Kaliapur, but he was assassinated by his uncle Ghiyasuddin Mahmud Shah. Ghiyasuddin Mahmud Shah, c. 1533-1538 CE, the last sultan of the Hussein Shahi dynasty, who ruled from Sonagain and was a weak, pleasure-loving and easygoing ruler who, according to many historians, neither had diplomatic foresight, nor any practical approach to the political problems which beset Bengal during his reign. His reign was marked by rebellions, including those by Khuda Bakhsh Khan, his general and governor of the Chittagong area, and Makdamalam, the governor of Hajipur. During his reign in c. 1534 CE, the Portuguese who had earlier arrived in Chittagong were captured and sent to Gao as prisoners on charges of misbehavior. But, even at the position of superiority, he reconciled with them and permitted them to establish factories at Chittagong and Huli. Ghiyasuddin and his Portuguese allies were defeated by Sher Shah Suri and his Afghans in c. 1538 CE, as his appeals to Mughal Emperor Humayun went unanswered. Bengal was thus annexed by Sher Shah Suri, who established the Sur Empire. Later in c. 1586 CE, Akbar conquered Bengal, and made it into a Suba, province. The establishment of Mughal control over Bengal coincided with the rise of agrarian settlements in the forested and marshy areas of southeastern Bengal. Soon after, with the spread of rice cultivation, this area became heavily populated with the local communities of fisher folks and peasants. The Mughals established their capital in the heart of the eastern delta at Dhaka, where officials and functionaries were granted land grants and they settled there. Assam. The history of Assam is the history of the confluence of the Tibeto-Burman, Sino-Tibetan, Indo-Aryan, and Austroasiatic cultures, as well as the confluence of people from the east, west and the north. It is noteworthy that although invaded over the centuries, it was never a vassal or a colony to an external power until the Burmese in c.1821 CE, and, subsequently, the British in c.1826 CE after the famous Treaty of Yandabu. The Assamese history has been derived from multiple sources. For instance, protohistory has been reconstructed from folklore. Epics like Mahabharata, and two medieval texts compiled in the Assam region, the Kalika Purana and the Yogini Tantra, while the historical account of ancient Assam begins with the establishment of Pushyavarman's Varman dynasty in the 4th century in the Kamarupa kingdom, which left behind a corpus of Kamarupa inscriptions on rock, copper plates, clay, royal grants, etc. There is also a mention of Kamarupa in Samudragupta's Allahabad pillar. During the medieval period, the Burangis, chronicles written in the Aham and the Assamese languages by the Aham kings offer a lot of detail about the Assam of medieval India. Since the time of Muhammad bin Bakhtiar Khalji, c.1207 CE as mentioned in the Karnai Boroxaboa rock inscription, the Muslim rulers of Bengal had tried to bring the Brahmaputra Valley in modern Assam under their control, but had to suffer a series of disastrous defeats in this region which was little known to them. There were two warring kingdoms in North Bengal and Assam. Kamata, also known as Kamrupa in the west, and the Aham kingdom in the east. The Ahams were a Mongoloid tribe from North Burma who had succeeded in establishing a powerful kingdom in the 13th century, and had become Hinduized in course of time. In fact, the name Assam is derived from them. Elias Shah invaded Kamata and he could penetrate up to Guwahati, but he could not hold the area, and the river Karatoya was accepted as the northeast boundary of Bengal. Later, the rulers of Kamata were gradually able to recover many areas on the eastern bank of the Karatoya. They also fought against the Ahams. Having made both their neighbors into enemies, the Kamata rulers sealed their doom as Alauddin Hussein Shah, with the aid of Ahams, attacked Kamata and destroyed the city of Kamatapa, near modern Cooch Behar, and thus annexed the kingdom to Bengal, appointing one of his sons as governor of the area. However, an attack by Alauddin's son Nusrat Shah later was repulsed with considerable losses to him. During this time, the eastern Brahmaputra Valley was under Suhungmung, c.1497-1539 CE, one of the greatest Aham rulers. He was the first Aham king to adopt a Hindu title, Svarga Noroyana, indicating rapid Hinduization of the Ahams as well as a move towards an inclusive polity. The Aham kings thus came to be known as the Svarga Dev, Heaven Lord. He is also called the Dihingya Raja, as he made Bakata on the Dihing River his capital. He not only repulsed the Muslim attack, but also extended his kingdom in all directions. The Vaishnavite reformer, Shankardeva, belonged to his time and spread Vaishnavism in the area. Orissa, Odisha. The Gongas of Orissa were succeeded by the Hindu Gajapati rulers, c.1435-1541 CE, during medieval times who ruled over Kalinga, present Odisha, large parts of Andhra Pradesh, and West Bengal, and the eastern and central parts of Madhya Pradesh and Jharkhand. Gajapati etymologically means a king with an army of elephants. The Gajapati dynasty was established by Kapilendra Deva in c.1435 CE, after the fall of the last eastern Gonga king, Bhanudeva IV. The dynasty is also known as a Suryavamsi dynasty. The Suryavamsi Gajapatis period in Odisha was marked by the popularity of the Bhakti movement under the influence of Sri Chaitanya, who arrived in the empire at the time of King Prataparudra and stayed for 18 long years at Puri, and by the construction of Jagannatha temples across the length and breadth of the empire. The Gajapati rulers were mainly instrumental in extending their rule in the south towards Karnataka, which brought them in conflict with Vijayanagar, the Reddis and the Bahmani sultans. However, by the early 16th century, the Gajapatis lost great portions of their southern dominion to Vijayanagar and Golconda, and even the Gajapatis were dislodged by Bowi dynasty. Kapilendra Deva, c.1435-1466 CE, first ruler of Gajapati dynasty. During his reign, his kingdom expanded from Gonga in the north to as far as Bida in the south. In about c.1450 CE, he installed his eldest son, Hamviradeva, as the governor of Rajamundry and Kondavidu. He also ordered Hamvira to conquer Vijayanagar and the Bahmani Sultanate. Hamvira successfully captured the Vijayanagar capital, Hampi, and forced the weak ruler Mallikarjuna Raya to pay yearly taxes. In c.1460 CE Hamvira Deva's commander, Tamavupala, conquered the southern states of Udayagiri, Nellore district, and Chandragiri. The rock edicts of Srirangam temple near Trichinopoly indicate that Hamvira Deva captured as far as Trichinopoly, Tanja, and Arcot in south, and in the c.1464 CE assumed the title of Daksina Kapileswara. Kapilendra Deva patronized Vaishnavism, expanded the Jagannath temple at Puri and constructed the Shaivite temple of Kapileswar in Bhubaneswar. He was a great patron of Vedic culture and himself wrote a Sanskrit play called Parshuram Bijaya. It was during his reign that Adiya language was officially used as an administrative language and the famous Adiya poet Sarala Das wrote the Adiya Mahabharata. Purushottama Deva, c. 1466-1497 CE, after the death of Kapilendra Deva, a succession war started among his sons and Purushottama Deva succeeded in securing the throne in c. 1484 CE by defeating Hamvira Deva. But, during this period, significant southern parts of the empire were lost to Saluva Narasimha, the ruler of Vijayanagar. However, by the time of his death, he managed to recover some of these territories. Prataparudra Deva, c. 1497-1540 CE, son of Purushottama Deva, during whose reign, Alauddin Hussain Shah of Bengal attacked twice. In the latter campaign, c. 1508 CE, the Bengal army marched up to Puri. 1. In c. 1512 CE, Krishna Deva Raya of the Vijayanagar Empire invaded Kalinga and defeated the forces of the Gajapati kingdom, and in c. 1522 CE, Suli Kup Shah of Golconda ousted the Adiya army from the Krishna, Godavari tract. Prataparudra was highly influenced by the works of Chaitanya and he gave up the military tradition as he retired himself into the life of an ascetic, leaving the future of the empire uncertain. Later, in c. 1541 CE, Prataparudra Deva's minister Govinda Vidyadhara rebelled against his weak successors, and after murdering the two sons of Prataparudra Deva he established the Bowi dynasty. The Bowi dynasty was short-lived and during this period the kingdom came into conflict with neighbouring kingdoms and reeled under civil wars. Later, history repeated itself as Mukunda Deva, a minister of the Bowi dynasty, came to throne in c. 1559 CE in a bloody coup, after assassinating the last two Bowi kings and declaring himself the ruler of Odisha. Mukunda Deva is considered the last independent ruler of Odisha, as the region saw a steady decline afterwards. In c. 1568 CE, Odisha came under the control of Sulayman Khan Karani of Karani dynasty, who was the ruler of the Sultanate of Bengal. The year of c. 1568 CE is important in the history of Odisha, as Odisha never emerged as an independent kingdom again.